And happening now, breaking news in the Middle East. Just moments ago, another base used by U.S. troops in Syria was attacked. Overnight, the U.S. launched airstrikes in Syria in retaliation to another drone strike that killed a U.S. contractor and injured 6 others. We've got the latest developments, including what we know this morning about where that drone came from.
Also, the fallout this morning after a searing session on Capitol Hill for TikTok's chief executive. Why the arduous hours-long testimony reportedly was not enough to sway some lawmakers on the app's national security concerns.
And how sweet it is. More college hoops action today as we enter day 2 of the Sweet 16 play. We've got all the bracket busters from last night and who we're watching heading in to the Elite 8. Good Friday morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Stephen Romo in for Savannah Sellers.
And I'm Joe Fryer. A lot to get to. We are going to start with that breaking news we're following in the Middle East. The White House has confirmed that another U.S. base in Syria has come under rocket attack today. National Security spokesperson John Kirby said there were no casualties in that one. It comes after the U.S. carried out airstrikes in eastern Syria overnight. The Pentagon said that was in retaliation for a suspected Iranian drone attack on a coalition base northeast of the country. The attack killed 1 U.S. contractor, wounded 6 other people. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
According to the Pentagon, an Iranian-made drone struck a coalition base in Syria, housing American troops and killing 1 American contractor, wounding 5 service members and another contractor. U.S. troops quickly responded with airstrikes against Iranian-backed militias also in Syria. We don't hear much about American troops in Syria, but they have been there for years in small numbers, right around 1,000 elite American special forces operating in this country. They are in the country and have been in the country fighting ISIS, trying to prevent ISIS from reconstituting. But Iran does not want their presence there. Iran sees the American military presence right next to Iraq, not far from Iran, as a threat to Iran's influence across the region. So it seems that Iran is stepping up its attacks against American troops to make it more painful for the Americans to stay in that country, with the hope that the Americans will pack it in and leave, allowing Iran to spread its influence even more across the region.
Richard, thank you.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in NBC News military analyst, Lieutenant General Steph Twitty. He's the former commander of the United States European Command. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. So this is not the first time U.S. forces have been targeted by drones, but fatalities in these situations are rare. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, they are rare, but, you know, this is bound to happen given that if you heard the CENTCOM commander's testimony yesterday, a total of 78 attacks since 2021. And I know personally, having studied the area and been in the area myself, that there's so many doggone terrorist groups within that area in Syria that they're trying to push the U.S. forces out of Syria, and they're trying to harass them daily as a result of us being there.
Now we have that breaking news about a second U.S. base in Syria that came under rocket fire today. Are you concerned these airstrikes are putting U.S. forces at a greater risk for retaliation?
Not at all. We have to protect our U.S. soldiers. We have to protect our U.S. interests and our bases there. Where the U.S. forces are located is up in the northeast portion of Syria, and they're on a base that is really occupied by the Kurds, and we have other coalition forces that are there as well. The last time I checked, we had UK, France, and others there. And so it's very important that whenever we're challenged, that we strike back quickly to protect our soldiers and our interests.
Developments coming quick there. Lieutenant General Steph Twitty, thanks so much.
Good to be with you.
Lawmakers are grappling with how to move forward with one of the nation's most popular content creation apps. The CEO of TikTok sparred with Congress for more than 5 hours yesterday. Members grilled the CEO about how the company handles data and whether it's free of influence from the Chinese government. But one of their biggest concerns was spying. Take a listen.
Has ByteDance spied on American citizens? I don't think the spying is the right way to describe it. Congresswoman, I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
Well, you know what?
I
find that actually preposterous.
The American data has always been stored in Virginia and Singapore in the past. And access of this is on an as-required basis by our engineers globally. By engineers for business purposes.
By engineers?
This is a private
ByteDance?
ByteDance.
The Communist Party?
No.
NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now from Capitol Hill with more on the hearing. So, Julie, how did the TikTok CEO respond to all these criticisms from lawmakers? And does it seem like most of Congress has already made up its mind about the future of TikTok?
Well, look, I can't think of another issue that is uniting Republicans and Democrats like this one is. And, you know, the TikTok CEO appeared before this panel. It's his first time up here on Capitol Hill testifying before any congressional committee. And this was a panel of 50 members, Republicans and Democrats. One of them, Lisa Blunt-Rochester, a Democrat from Delaware, actually said she walked in with an open mind and ended up leaving with more concerns than she had when she entered the room. They pressed him on everything from data privacy to whether the Chinese government is spying on Americans. And furthermore, if Congress were even to take any steps to restrict use of the platform, what would China have in terms of the data it's already collected from the 150 million TikTok users? A lot going on here in that space, of course, with China, but also in terms of how this is affecting children. I found one really interesting moment that may have gotten lost or buried here, where he was pressed on whether he lets his own children, one of them 8 years old, use this app. He said no, because they live in Singapore. They're not even allowed to use it under the age of 13. That, of course, is different here.
Julie, let's discuss what happens now that the hearing's over. How likely is a ban? Could there be some sort of compromise that falls short of an outright ban?
Well, we saw TikTok influencers come up to the Hill the day before the CEO testified, and I thought that was really telling because you had 3 lawmakers, all of them progressives, join them in defending the app from being banned, from anything happening to it, saying this is a problem that affects Facebook and Twitter too. But on the flip side, you have some prominent Democrats and Republicans, including Mark Warner, who's the head of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, introducing a bill that would basically allow for a nationwide TikTok ban. That's not going to happen overnight, because I even asked Leader Schumer if he's going to commit to putting that on the floor. He said he's still studying what the best course of action would be. Same goes for Speaker McCarthy here in the House. So this is not a process that's going to happen tonight, tomorrow, or even next week.
I mean, there are some lawmakers who have quite the following on TikTok. What are some of them saying about all this?
Yeah, you're thinking of Jeff Jackson from North Carolina. He has 1.2 million followers on TikTok. He's a freshman lawmaker. He said, look, this is how I communicate with my constituents. This is how I get my messaging out there. And he had another idea. He said, look, a ban is not inevitable. Sure, there definitely are data privacy concerns here, but he actually said that the app should change ownership. That's something that the CEO was pressed on repeatedly, because ByteDance, which owns TikTok, is owned by the Chinese government. And that's a top concern here, even as they're getting into what's called Project Texas. This is an idea by TikTok to transfer some of that data storage from TikTok to Oracle, a U.S.-based company in Texas. So a few ideas floating around here. It's not clear what's going to happen in the end.
All right, Julie Sirkin on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Julie.
All right, now let's get to the latest on the New York grand jury investigating former President Trump. This morning, it looks like jurors will not resume the case until at least Monday. So the timing, even then, is uncertain as to when jurors could vote on a possible indictment. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
Stephen and Joe, good morning. It's been a roller coaster of a week, and it showed us once again how hard it is to predict what a grand jury will do. The entire process shrouded in secrecy. And it was just last weekend that former President Trump posted on his social media platform that he would be arrested on Tuesday. That, of course, did not come to pass. Instead, we heard from a rebuttal witness, Robert Costello, a former legal advisor to Michael Cohen, on Monday. But we did not hear from Cohen himself. At least the grand jurors didn't, as we expected on Monday. Instead, on Wednesday, when we were expecting the grand jurors to hear more testimony, we learned that prosecutor Alvin Bragg had asked them to stay home. They returned to the courthouse on Thursday, but we learned that they didn't hear any testimony regarding the alleged hush money case, and instead, considered another matter, a case unrelated to the payment to Stormy Daniels. So the earliest now that we could see a development in this grand jury investigation is Monday. That's when grand jurors are expected to meet once again. They could potentially either hear from another witness or vote on an indictment. Of course, this all comes as President Trump, former President Trump, holds a rally in Waco, Texas over the weekend. Stephen and Joe, back to you.
All right, Gabe, thanks so much. And for more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, good morning to you. So quite a week it's been. Of course, it all started with President Trump posting that he was going to be arrested on Tuesday. That, of course, did not come to pass. But what else are we looking at here?
He trolled us. We all fell for it. And the one thing that made me think that he might have been right was the increased police activity here in New York City, because my thinking was, well, the police are part of the same branch as the New York DA. I can't imagine the New York DA would let police put up all those bicycle barriers and let all this stuff happen unless they knew something. But what can we expect? I am of the opinion that this whole Stormy Daniels payoff is a minor issue. It's possibly a distraction. In reality, what I think we should be looking for is allegations that Trump boosted his financial status when it came to getting loans, and then reduced it when it came to paying taxes. It's a pretty straightforward theory. There are defenses, for example, that Trump may not have personally known, or that people routinely inflate value of real estate and it's subjective. But I think those are more likely than this whole Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels avenue that we've all been chasing, if only because I think the falsification of business records here is a stretch.
Some House Republicans want the Manhattan DA to come testify about this. Alvin Bragg has now responded to that, calling it a, quote, unprecedented inquiry into a pending local prosecution. Thoughts on all this, and could something like this, what House GOP members want, impact the actual investigation going on right now?
Yeah, it would be fascinating. If you read Mark Pomerantz's book that just came out, People v. Trump, he talks a lot about the inner workings and the meetings between not just Cy Vance's administration, but Alvin Bragg's administration. And it's very telling because you see many times going back and forth, some waffling, some confidence in bringing the charges. And that's the kind of thing that might even give the GOP a roadmap or a reason to even bring in Alvin Bragg. I can't imagine they didn't read that book or aren't aware of it, but it is a rare look into the inner workings of the prosecutorial process.
And quickly here, wanted to ask about the classified documents case. You know, Evan Corcoran, Trump's attorney, they've pierced the attorney-client privilege. He could go before the grand jury as early as today. Trump has denied any wrongdoing here. What's next for this one?
I think Evan Corcoran is going to testify. He will not assert the Fifth Amendment. A lawyer, their bar license is the most important thing they have. You don't want to risk the death sentence, the figurative death sentence, which is losing your ticket. So he will testify. He will come clean. He will tell them everything they need to know. And frankly, if he's willing to admit it, and he probably isn't, he probably feels a little jilted or a little swindled by his client, Donald Trump. Here's the reality. Lawyers get lied to by their clients all the time. And we really resent it, but we've come to be accustomed to it.
Fascinating developments. Danny Savalos, thank you.
Now to an NBC News exclusive on the North Sea, as Russian ships are increasing their own activity around the oil and gas fields that keep Europe warm. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello joins us with more on this. Hey, Tom, good morning.
Good morning. Back from a very cold patrol with NATO ships on the North Sea since the Nord Stream gas pipeline explosion last September. NATO commanders say the Russian Navy has been mapping Norway's oil and gas fields that supply Europe's needs, a potential North Atlantic flashpoint between Russia and the West. In the forbidding cold of the North Sea, NATO is fully armed and on watch. For 3 days and 2 nights, we joined the crew of the Norwegian Navy Coast Guard ship Sortland.
With this lighthouse, we're cutting west and headed out to the oil fields.
A new NATO mission standing guard over the massive oil and gas fields here that keep Europe and Britain warm. It's a high priority. This exclusive video from the Norwegian Air Force shows Russian nuclear subs, ships, and fighter jets moving through and over these highly vulnerable waters between Norway and Scotland. Adrian Valanger is the ship's officer.
What we see out here is that there are Russian vessels that they're having weird sailing patterns that makes me suspicious.
and something else that Norwegian fast boats are now chasing down. What makes NATO and Norway awfully suspicious right now is the number of drones that have been flying over Norway's oil and gas platforms, even its refineries. If it is Russia, they have spent years surveying the landscape, and they know precisely where all of Norway's vulnerabilities might be.
They come and suddenly they just disappear. They don't necessarily head back home to a mothership.
NATO warship Foxtrot 333. This is Whiskey 342. Over.
We were there as NATO moved German, Spanish, and Dutch warships into Norway's largest gas fields. Norwegian Foreign Minister Annika Heltfeldt. How critical is Norway to the NATO alliance?
I think Norway is NATO in the north. But in case of a military attack against Norway, we are absolutely dependent on reinforcement from other NATO allies.
6 months after someone blew up the Nord Stream gas pipeline that ran from Russia to Germany, there are plenty of theories about who did it. Russia, Ukrainian sympathizers, Britain, the U.S., even Norway.
Did Norway have any role at all in the attack on Nord Stream?
No, not at all. It's ridiculous.
Vladimir Putin has accused the U.S. and the West of the attack, claims the U.S. has dismissed. Back on our Norwegian patrol ship, heightened vigilance. It's not just the oil and gas platforms, it is also the undersea pipelines that carry oil and gas, and internet, data, and telecom lines stretching all the way across the Atlantic, and all of it potentially vulnerable to sabotage. Here on the North Sea, the global economy vulnerable to attack.
Norway shares a 123-mile land border with Russia, and Norwegian leaders tell me the war in Ukraine has undermined any trust they had with Moscow, probably for decades to come. Nearly all official communication between Norway and Russia has been discontinued since that invasion of Ukraine. Joe?
Very cool. Tom Costello with an NBC News exclusive. Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Well, a three-day strike by workers in the Los Angeles Unified School District has now come to an end. More than 3,000 staffers will make their return to work today. Members of the union took to the picket lines Tuesday, demanding higher wages and better working conditions. This strike comes after months of unsuccessful negotiations with the school district. On Wednesday, LA's mayor actually stepped in to help reach an agreement after the superintendent accused the union of just refusing to negotiate. While both the union and the district have now returned to the bargaining table, though, no specifics on those negotiations have yet been released.
Time now for your morning news now weather forecast.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now with a look. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning to you both. Great to see you on this Friday. And we are looking at a very active Friday weather-wise. We're also looking at potentially dangerous weather day, especially in the southern plains into portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley. We have a couple things going on here. We have a cold front. It's a long-stretching cold front. You can clearly see it on radar where it is. Where you see those brighter colors, also the green, that's where the rain is falling. So this is a long cold front, but it's not moving. It is moving, but it's moving very, very slowly. So we're going to see rounds of rain along this cold front. But then it's also pulling in some Gulf moisture, and that's really warm water, warm air, and we are looking at the chance for severe storms as we go throughout the afternoon. So intense moisture plumes pushing north, almost like the atmospheric rivers we've been talking about in the Pacific Northwest. Not exactly the same, but very, very similar, and it's pulling from the tropics, and that's why we're looking at the chance for some strong storms later on this afternoon. We're also looking at the potential for some flooding, some flash flooding, where you see the red from Cincinnati to Evansville, Paducah, down to Jonesboro. We're looking at the chance for flash flooding. We've already had flash flood warnings. We have flood watches as we go throughout the day, and there are 140 locations that could see minor to moderate flooding expected today, and that's because we're seeing 2 inches of rain per hour, and it's going over the same areas on already saturated soil. 22 million people impacted. Where you see the green, that is a flood watch. The flash flood warning is in red. They will pop in and out as we go throughout the day, and this is what we're particularly concerned about. 15 million people at risk for strong, long-tracking tornadoes. Winds gusting over 75 miles per hour. Could see a tornado outbreak as we go throughout the later parts of Friday, and damaging hail. So especially where you see the red, Greenville, and the orange, Memphis, Little Rock, Tupelo, down to Alexandria, that's where we're concerned for strong tornadoes, and they could be EF3 or greater. So Bill Cairns will be here in the afternoon tracking this all for us. Back to you guys.
All right, we know you'll keep an eye on it. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
March Madness's Sweet 16 is one of the most exciting times of the year for college basketball fans. It officially tipped off last night.
And with 4 teams now having punched their tickets to the Elite Eight, it was not a night without some surprises and upsets.
NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from the University of Miami in Coral Gables, Florida. Sam, good morning. So let's talk about last night. The Florida Atlantic University Owls, they've been underdogs throughout March Madness. They pulled off a major win against Tennessee last night. I think they should credit you because you were there with them before this whole thing started, shining a light on them. I think you're their good luck charm, Sam.
I kind of feel like, Joe, I need to go to Vegas right now and play some bets because the odds of this really coming to pass weren't that great, especially when you consider the fact that FAU guys had not even been competing in Division I basketball until about 30 years ago. They had never made the NCAA tournament until 2002. That was their only appearance. Tough matchup against Alabama. They lost. Fast forward 20 years. They are now in the Elite Eight, 1 win away from the Final Four, and they were playing at the basketball mecca that is Madison Square Garden. Look at the scene outside of MSG last night for FAU fans. Now, I know, guys, there is still obviously a very strong Florida to New York connection, but I'm not sure that anybody expected this for this program, especially led by a senior in Michael Forrest, who was the first recruit for Coach Dusty May. For this dream, the fruition of that, to come to happen now, it means so much to him, so much to the team, and they play selflessly, which is why it is so exciting to get behind them, guys.
Yeah, exciting indeed. So, Sam, which other team scored big last night?
So, Stephen, you're certainly going to have to look at Kansas State, which had the first overtime game of the tournament. You had a 5'8" point guard in Marquise Noel, who recorded a record-breaking 19 assists. This guy was dictating play on the court last night. Patrick Mahomes, Kevin Durant, other sports superstars were tweeting about his skills out there on the court. Gonzaga also won in a classic rematch with UCLA. They were both in the Final Four a couple of years ago. So just UConn blowing out its opponent as well, setting the stage now for a really powerful Elite Eight and then Final Four. We're going to find out with the next couple of days who those teams are going to be.
And Sam, we want to ask you, you're at the University of Miami right now. Huge moment for both the men's and women's teams. We've got about 30 seconds here. What should we know?
The rarity of this situation, guys. You're talking about both the men's and women's teams in the Sweet 16. They're making these shirts, Sweet 16U officially. And it's not often that this kind of thing happens on campus. The buzz is incredible. I'm told that the student-run group, Category 5, has organized watch parties for the women at 2:30 this afternoon, then again for the men this evening. So there's just an incredible energy here as folks are enjoying the moment because you do not know how often this kind of thing happens. So far, it's the first.
No kidding. I hope there are no classes there today because no one is showing up to those. All right, Sam Brock at the University of Miami. Sam, thank you so much.
Well, coming up on this hour of Morning News Now, we'll dig deeper into a disturbing new report showing anti-Semitic incidents are now happening at the highest rate in decades. We've got the numbers and what's behind that rise of hate.
Plus, an in-depth discussion on women's mental health in a post-Roe world. All that and more up next.
We're back now with the latest turmoil brewing in Israel. It's due to the far-right government's overhaul of the judicial system there. Thousands of people have been protesting these changes while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doubling down on those plans. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Chaos in the streets of Tel Aviv as Israeli demonstrators clash with police and step up their fight against government plans to weaken the Israeli Supreme Court. But even as the first part of Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial overhaul becomes law, signs that the public pressure may be working. The prime minister abruptly delaying an international trip to give a late-night address to the nation with a more conciliatory tone.
מתנגדי הרפורמה אינם בוגדים ותומכי הרפורמה אינם פשיסטים.
But giving no sign he's backing down. Israel's defense minister increasingly concerned by thousands of military reservists saying they'll refuse to serve if the legislation goes through, raising questions about Israel's defense readiness. We met 2 of those reservists, members of the same special forces unit Netanyahu once served in.
What would you say to him, one soldier to another?
I would say, please return to your core values. Running forward so fast is tearing the people apart and is tearing the army apart. We love the army, we love the country, we love our flag, and we are defending Israel now. But under a dictatorship will not be possible.
And marching silently through central Tel Aviv, a phalanx of protesters in the unmistakable outfits of The Handmaid's Tale.
This costume has become a symbol for women around the world standing up for their rights. And these Israeli women tell us they fear if Netanyahu's plan goes through, his socially conservative government will roll back their rights.
The idea is to show what is going to happen in Israel once our democratic system collapses and we become a religious theocracy.
But despite the protests, the judicial overhaul moving forward. Overnight, Parliament voting to bar the Supreme Court from deeming Netanyahu unfit for office because of the criminal corruption charges against him, allegations he denies. Israel's opposition calling the new law obscene and a blow to democracy. And with protesters unmoved by Netanyahu's calls for calm, every sign that Israel's deep divisions will only grow deeper still. As things stand, we expect one of the most controversial parts of this overhaul to go through next week, a law that would give the government more control over the appointment of judges. Parliament then has a week's break for Passover, which may just possibly be a chance to calm tensions.
All right, Raph Sanchez, thanks so much.
More international headlines now. North Korea says it has tested a new nuclear-capable underwater attack drone.
Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning. North Korea's state news agency says that an underwater drone capable of unleashing what it calls a radioactive tsunami has been tested. KCNA says the drone cruised for over 59 hours at a depth of up to 500 feet underwater before it was detonated off North Korea's coast. This is the latest show of military strength and provocation by North Korea as South Korea and the U.S. continue their joint military exercises across the border. Now let's go to France, where Thursday workers staged a national strike against government plans to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. More than 1 million people took to the streets across the country, including in Paris, where groups of protesters clashed with riot police. French police said around 1,000 people acted violently, setting fires, launching smoke bombs and damaging properties. Because of the ongoing protests, the upcoming visit by King Charles to France has been postponed. Well, talking about King Charles, now let's go to London, where people visiting Westminster Abbey will be able to step on the exact spot where the king will be crowned on the 6th of May. Authorities in Britain say this will be the first time in living memory the public will be allowed to walk across the so-called cosmati pavement, as long as they take their shoes off and wear socks, so to protect the precious 13th century mosaic. Now, that's a small price to pay to step on history, guys.
Exactly.
Steve and Joe.
And I love how it's just like home, like shoes off, socks on.
Make sure those
off.
socks are clean.
Exactly. Thanks, Claudio. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
This morning, we are taking a closer look at a troubling new report from the Anti-Defamation League. It finds that last year, nearly 3,700 anti-Semitic incidents were reported. That's an average of 10 a day and the highest amount ever in the more than 40 years that the ADL has been counting them. Joining us now is George Salim, the Anti-Defamation League Senior Vice President for National Affairs. George, we appreciate you taking time to speak with us about this morning. I mean, so recently, the ADL also released a report on anti-Semitic attitudes in America. That found 20% of people surveyed believe in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. That's nearly double the amount from just 2019. So do we have an idea of what's fueling this rise in hate, this dramatic change in attitudes?
So this is an important conversation to note that not only are there a range of factors contributing to this rise, but what you really have here is a year after year increase of anti-Semitic incidents basically over the course of the past 5+ years. The numbers that you led with at the top of the segment are at historic highs. The nearly 3,700 incidents are the highest we've seen in the nearly 40 years since we've been recording these incidents year in and year out. And to your specific question as to what is really driving this increase in both anti-Semitic incidents and attitudes, it's really a range of different factors. The first is that national figures, whether in politics or government or popular culture, in many instances have been echoing the anti-Semitic tropes that we see contributing to some of the most significant incidents that we've seen over the course of the past 12 months, and certainly in calendar year 22.
You know, last night I saw the Broadway musical Parade, which is incredibly powerful. It focuses on anti-Semitism that took place more than a century ago. Yet here we are talking about these issues. And, you know, one of the things that's changed is social media. How much of a role does social media play in all of this?
Social media is really the amplifier here. So in many instances, what happens in the real world is echoed online and vice versa. So you have different spheres of our day-to-day lives, whether our online personas or whether our real world day-to-day lives, you know, really intertwining in a way that's amplifying an already both politically volatile and at many times deeply polarized sense of both politics and culture that we see play out day-to-day in, you know, on national news as well as in our states and cities across the country. So social media is absolutely an amplifying element of the incidents that we saw in calendar year 22.
So what is it we can do to try and reverse this trend, to stop the hate, reduce the spread of anti-Semitism?
So there's a number of different factors. To start with, governments at the federal, state, and local level need to pass legislation and speak out forcefully with resolutions, laws, policies, regulations that speak out forcefully to condemning all forms of bias, bigotry, and hate, to include anti-Semitism specifically. What we know historically is that anti-Semitism is often the canary in the coal mine. When there's an incident of anti-Semitism, there's likely other instances of discrimination, racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia in those same cities, towns, and municipalities. So passing common sense legislation, resolutions, measures is just a starting point. But on top of that, this needs to be part of our day-to-day conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, about combating all forms of bias and bigotry. Anti-Semitism needs to be part of the conversations in our communities and in our schools that we're consciously aware of and not contributing, perhaps even unwillingly, to the tropes that help spread this horrific type of bias and bigotry spread nationwide.
George Salim, we appreciate you taking some time to have that conversation with us this morning. Thank you.
Coming up on Morning News Now, the fight over abortion rights taking a toll on many women.
Up next, why some professionals say the end of Roe v. Wade could contribute to a growing mental health crisis in America. This is Morning News Now. We're back with more on the battle over abortion and the effect it's having on women's mental health.
Yeah, according to a new study from the JAMA Network, women aged 18 to 44 who are living in states that banned abortion reported a 10% increase in mental distress after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last year. The data is adding to researchers' concerns that the loss of abortion rights will contribute to the ongoing mental health crisis in the U.S.
For more on this, let's bring in Kelly Kitley, psychotherapist, licensed clinical social worker, and author of Myself. Good to have you with us. So what are the main takeaways from this study? And I want to reemphasize this stat that Stephen just mentioned. 10% increase in mental distress among women ages 18 to 44 who are living in states that banned abortion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for covering this topic. It's really important. And with the ban of abortion, with the overturn of Roe v. Wade, many women who cannot access abortion in their state are feeling increased anxiety, increased depression, increased substance use, which is actually putting harm on the mother as well as the unborn child.
And let's talk about the ramifications here for mental health, specifically for women of color. Talking about the mental health resources that these women have already for marginalized groups is such a problem in the United States. When you add this on top of it, just exactly what are they dealing with?
Thank you. I mean, it is disproportionately separated in terms of women of color maybe not being able to access mental health care or have affordable contraception. And so the distress that they might be feeling in terms of partner violence as well, financial insecurity, and not being able to get the medical care that they need is really problematic.
So for those who are experiencing this increase in mental distress because of this, What are your best tips? What are the best ways to deal with that?
It is so important to check in with any kind of daily functioning of, many women are feeling ashamed and might not want to leave their home and be seen out in public pregnant, and depression breeds in isolation. So it's really important to reach out to a doctor, or there are lots of community mental health agencies in some of these states where women can access mental health care.
And that's one of the biggest challenges, maybe, that women don't realize that the resources are out there. But there are options. There's always something, even if money's an issue, right?
Absolutely. There are free or low-cost services that women can access. And sometimes there's waiting lists. But being able to make that first step is the hardest but most important piece.
All right. We want to make the note here. If you or anyone you know is struggling, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. Kelly Kitley, thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation. We appreciate it.
Well, coming up this morning, a startlingly close flyby. This weekend, an asteroid as big as 300 feet wide will zip right between the Earth and the Moon. What us Earthlings should know about this once-in-a-decade event.
And not so sweet, lawmakers in California considering a controversial ban that might actually pull Skittles off the shelves. We're going to explain why next on Morning News Now.
We're back. Space junkies worldwide are anticipating a rare event that's set to happen in space this weekend. A newly discovered asteroid as large as 300 feet wide will fly between the Earth and the Moon. And it's so rare that NASA says it's only happening about once every decade.
Which in space terms feels not rare. But anyway, for more on this, Mike Massimino, former NASA astronaut, professor of mechanical engineering at Columbia University and senior advisor for space programs at the Intrepid Museum, joins us now, and a friend of the show. So what do we need to know about this asteroid? How close is it going to get to us? And will, I feel like that picture where it was this big answered this question, but will we be able to see it with the naked eye or no?
Probably not with the naked eye, Joe. Probably the best time to see it is actually this evening. The closest it'll come, which is about 100,000 miles to us. So to give you some reference, the moon is about 240,000 miles away. So this one is a little closer to us than halfway to the moon. But that seems kind of close in space terms, but it's not going to come anywhere near us as far as hitting us. Yeah. It's not an issue, but it is pretty close to us.
That would be a bigger story if it were.
That's a bigger story. I don't know if we'd be doing that here neither. But no, it's no danger of that happening. But as far as seeing it, the best time to see it will be tonight. It's going to make its closest pass, but that's going to be during the day tomorrow in the afternoon. So the best time to actually see it will be this evening. Naked eye is going to be hard. Most likely going to need a telescope or have a friend with a telescope. But certainly it's visible if you're in a remote area where there's not a lot of light pollution. Get away from the city if you can. For those buffs who are interested in looking at astronomy buffs, it's going to be kind of east of Orion, which is a pretty recognizable constellation. Look to the east, get a telescope, and you should be able to look at it. It should be like a slow-moving star is what you would see.
Oh, sounds very cool. And you said it's not going to hit us, which is great news.
Not hitting us.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. But what if something 300, the size of this, 300 feet wide, what if that did make impact with the Earth?
Yeah, so that could do some damage. If it hit a city, it would do some damage in a city. But it's not the kind of asteroid, it's not the size of an asteroid that would like take out the planet no matter where it hit. We're really worried about it. There's a really big one coming in. No matter where it hits, it's going to cause a lot of damage. Most of our planet is water. So first it's got to come in and hit us. That's very unlikely that anything like that is happening anytime soon. And then what hitting us means hitting our atmosphere. So it's going to slow down in the atmosphere. Most of it will burn up in the atmosphere. Whatever makes it through will most likely land in the ocean or a remote area, a lot of desert and mountains. We don't live very, when I try, going around in orbit, you looked at it's mainly blue. It really is a blue planet. And we're only living in these certain areas. So the odds of any big piece making it through and actually like hitting a populated area are very low. And if that happened, it would do, this kind of asteroid would do damage to just that local area.
Not going to happen, but
not
I love the reassurance.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We're okay. But it's a great opportunity for researchers to look at this.
Yeah, well, what could we learn about it?
There has been ongoing for decades now the interest in maybe someday mining asteroids, and we're getting into technology where that might be possible. So the astronomers are going to be taking a look at this to learn what it's made of, understand asteroids in general. Getting it this close, getting one this close is quite rare, as you said. So it's an opportunity to see it up close, to study it. not only from the science part of it, or what we might be able to learn about the asteroid for minerals, what we could use in the future maybe if we can get one of these things and mine it, but also from the area of planetary defense, which we were talking about if you look at planetary defense, defending ourselves against these rocks. We had that DART mission earlier where they intercepted an asteroid and nudged it a bit. This is an opportunity to see how this one behaves, study its motion. In case one does come close again and we want to do something about it, I think we'll be better prepared. So I think in those two areas, science and in planetary defense, this is a nice opportunity.
It's very cool. Can I get you to endorse my plea to people? Don't take a picture of it with your iPhone and post it, because I know we're not going to be very good.
No, it probably won't be very good. That probably won't work. There might be some people with telescopes will get really good photos.
That's cool. Stick to the telescope.
Yeah,
Give us
the
those.
professionals will keep us. Try to enjoy the event. The professionals will give us the real photos.
Live in the present. Good advice. Yeah. Mike Massimino, always good to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, time now for some financial headlines. If you have a legacy verified account on Twitter, you can get ready to pay up.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Joe, Stephen, good morning. Yep, so listen up, because Twitter will start removing those legacy verified check marks on April 1st. The company is telling users to sign up for its premium Twitter Blue subscription if they want to keep their blue check. CEO Elon Musk has been promising for months to get rid of the badges that were given out under Twitter's previous rules. Twitter Blue costs $8 a month if you subscribe through the web, or $11 if you sign up via Apple's App Store. Members can make 4,000-character tweets, edit their posts, and enjoy higher reply rankings. Walmart is laying off hundreds of employees at e-commerce fulfillment centers in 5 states as retailers brace for a tough year ahead. They're expecting sales to be flat or decline as inflation and a shift back to services is taking a bite out of their business. A Walmart spokesperson confirming the cuts, saying the company made the decision to better prepare for the future needs of customers. Wendy's has spring fever. It's debuting 3 new menu items inspired by the season. Starting Tuesday, you can get a grilled chicken ranch wrap, grilled chicken Cobb salad, or a blueberry pomegranate lemonade. And customers can purchase the items through the Wendy's mobile app or your favorite delivery service, or of course at your local restaurant. You can also earn points if you order directly through the Wendy's app or My Wendy's online account, guys. So
there you go. Don't brush your teeth before the blueberry pomegranate lemonade.
Very good advice.
Yeah. All right.
Very good advice.
Well, now to California, where a bill aimed at banning Skittles and other candy is making its way through the state house and grabbing a lot of headlines along the way.
The legislation, known as AB 418, would ban 5 chemical food additives and could potentially outlaw a whole host of foods, from hard candies like Skittles and hot tamales to Nesquik strawberry milk, many other goods, breads, sodas, and more. It's unclear if the bill has enough support to actually pass, though, but it's certainly grabbing some headlines.
Not strawberry milk, wow. NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos joins us now to help talk about this proposal and put it into perspective. Danny, good morning to you. So let's start with that bill itself. The lawmaker behind this proposal has actually said he doesn't think it will pass. So why propose it?
Lawmakers do this all the time. They can do a head count and figure out whether or not their legislation is going to pass. Sometimes they do it as a Pyrrhic-style victory, something that they can say that they introduced, that they tried, even if it didn't succeed. But what often happens is even that failed piece of legislation becomes a springboard for future legislation in the event the legislature has enough people in the majority or supermajority or whatever's required to pass that bill someday in the future. So it's really about planting a flag on a beachhead for the future.
It may sound like a long shot, but these 5 chemicals are actually already banned in the European Union, in Canada, in Brazil, which is kind of eye-opening. Why are they still legal here then?
Well, the jaded interpretation could be the corporate interests have somehow influenced legislatures in the United States. But far more likely is that those countries simply have different standards, maybe higher standards, than the agencies here in the United States that have primary responsibility for determining what is and what is not banned. And because we're talking about different countries, different sovereigns, you're always going to have different laws, different regulations, because they simply don't have the same legal structure that we do.
Well, studies show that one of these chemicals in particular, Danny, titanium dioxide, may have caused cancer in rats. Mars and several other companies, they are insisting it's safe, like you were just talking about. So what are they legally obligated to do in these situations when a type of study like this comes out with a warning?
The key is whether or not the studies are conclusive, and really companies are mostly concerned not so much about regulation, although they are concerned about regulation, but they're going to be concerned about liability for lawsuits. And a study conducted pursuant to a mouse or rat model is certainly interesting, but it doesn't rise to the level of conclusive such that a company might change its policies or practices. Now, if there's increasing studies enough that a plaintiff's lawyer could find an expert to establish causation if somebody develops cancer, then that's a totally different thing. And that kind of finding will move more quickly than legislation, believe me, because companies may be concerned about legislation and regulation, but they're far more concerned about massive class action lawsuits that are an existential threat to those companies.
And Danny, I would guess if a law like this did pass, we said it's a long shot, but if it did, those companies would probably be pretty quick to sue and try and fight the law, right?
They might, and certainly if the law is passed, then there's an immediacy that would probably grant standing. So they might be able to, but even if they did, they would need some ground to set aside the law. So it wouldn't be about the substance so much, possibly about the procedure.
All right, fascinating. Danny Ceballos, thanks so much.
Coming up, growing concerns about the iconic monarch butterfly.
Yeah, when we come back here on Morning News Now, why the species migration pattern is changing and why that is raising flags for some scientists.
Back now with the latest on my favorite country star. We should just call this segment the Dolly Talker. Dolly Parton is releasing a new book. This one's all about fashion. It's called Behind the Seams, My Life in Rhinestones. The Grammy winner giving fans a peek behind the curtain at some of her most iconic looks. Now, this is also the second book in a planned Parton trilogy. It's like Lord of the Rings or Lord of the Wigs. The first was released in 2020, taking a deep dive into her music career. We own that one. The Rock and Roll Hall of Famer wrote in a recent Instagram post, "It is my hope that you will enjoy a look at my life in costume and hair and get to know some of the great people who have helped shape my life and my look." The book is set to be released in October. I'm already reserving my copy.
There you go, just in time for Christmas.
There you go.
You know, Dolly has a perfume. I got it for my mother-in-law last year, sent from above. Can't go wrong with Dolly.
There you go. No kidding. That's cool.
Love that. Well, now to a new concerning report that's out, shining a light on the troubles facing the iconic monarch butterfly. Research shows the number of butterflies migrating in Mexico has dropped by 22% this year. But activists and environmentalists aren't losing hope just yet. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber has that story.
One of the world's most recognized creatures, now in grave danger. For decades, the monarch butterfly has found refuge in the heart of Mexico, the state of Michoacan becoming their home in the winter. Acres upon acres of land covered by this magnificent insect, becoming an attraction for tourists worldwide. But new research released this week shows the monarch population is dwindling, dropping by 22% from last year.
The spectacular phenomenon that the people that visit colonies see is not the same.
While researchers aren't counting one by one, they do say the total area those butterflies occupied this winter dropped from 7 acres to 5. Each year, monarchs east of the Rocky Mountains make the 3,000-mile trek across the continent to winter in the mountains of central Mexico. But frost and extreme temperatures in the United States have led to a rapid decline in the migrating population. And once the butterflies make it to Mexico, the struggle continues with illegal logging, fires, and storm damage in the fir forest of Michoacan, drastically reducing the canopy cover of their home.
We must consider for Mexico the degradation of the forest as a factor important, because when we change the use of the natural ecosystem, we eliminate the natural habitats for monarchs too.
These fearless flyers, no stranger to adversity, landing on the endangered species list in 2022. A multinational effort banding together in recent years. Experts at the city of Goleta Butterfly Grove in California are working tirelessly to protect the habitat of these iconic insects.
So by encouraging cities,
counties, private landowners to manage for habitats that protect these overwintering butterflies with their wildflowers and open space habitats that will help those butterflies to reproduce inland. Those are things we can do across the West to encourage monarch butterfly recovery.
Still holding out hope for the beloved monarch.
Thanks to Ellison Barber for that report. The monarch's trek remains one of the longest migrations of insect species known to scientists.
That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But your news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.